All right, Brett, thank you for joining me on Agent Success Stories. In 2025, you will be our number one agent from units, which was a huge jump unit wise from 2024. But before we get to where you're at, um, because as a top producing agent, I remember sitting in the front row of my former company, seeing the person collect the number one team leader award in units and volume. And it just actually, I use the sentence, it seemed outside of the realm of possibility, right? And so when agents are sitting at 10, 20, 30, 40 transactions, or even have a team of 100, you're doing 10, 12, 13x that. Take us back to what got you into the industry, what it looked like. Talk to me about that part of your journey.
Yeah, definitely. So, first off, thank you for having me on here. I really appreciate it. It's always lovely to catch up with you. But I started in 2007. I had a landscaping company out of high school. I did not go to college. I wasn't the best student, as a lot of folks that got real estate licenses, are not. So from there, got my real estate license. I actually failed my exam like 4 times with the state. So I think I was officially licensed January of 2008. From there, I
You picked
worked
the
for White.
perfect year to start.
Yeah, great. Yeah, it's great time. But then again, had I not sold my landscaping company in June of 2007, I'd probably still be a landscaper because nobody would have bought it had it not been, released at that time. But I got licensed January 2008, 21 years old at the time. So also not a great age to be selling real estate in the suburbs. And I was working for Weichert Realtors. They were who licensed me on that side of things. They were also who claimed they had the best training and everything out there. And fast forward 7 months or so, I had failed as a realtor. The money from selling the landscaping company a year prior had run dry. My credit score was down at like a 520, something that I hadn't, I went out and I financed a new C class in 2008. It was a new model that came out. I did all this stupid stuff that you shouldn't do. Don't ever do that. But I just figured the income would follow if I went and got a fancy car. So put myself in a bad hole financially and actually failed as a realtor. So I left the real estate industry in July of 2008 and went into the automotive business. I started selling cars just to make money and just to pay the bills. September of 2008, and I was pretty good at it. I did internet sales. It was not that difficult. Lead came in, sell them a car, give them a good price on it. They're out the door. September of 2008 is when financial districts started to really fail. And that's when the market started to get real. Our car business, I want to say our dealership went from selling like 600 cars a month to 60 cars a month. So that well completely dried up. I then lasted till October. And I remember looking at my sales managers at the time and they were worried. I mean, they were used to making good money and they were dipping into their savings for the first time in a long time. So I didn't know what I was going to do. I was back to not making money. And I saw an ad on Craigslist that said, make $100,000 your first year in real estate doing rentals in Hoboken, New Jersey. So I became a rental agent. I went to Hoboken. I started October 31st, Halloween of 2008, and started doing a ton of rentals.
And pause right there. Was that with the brokerage, with the team? Who ran the ad?
I mean, that was before like team was really a thing, or not. It was just kind of coming around. But it was with a brokerage. It was called Gotham Realty. It was a mom and pop in Hoboken. It was a super cool brokerage. Really, a lot of great people that are all with us at EXP actually came out of that brokerage too. So the broker owner did a really good job of teaching agents how to make $100,000 their first year doing rentals. The problem is he didn't know how to show somebody who made $100,000 doing rentals how to make $1 million doing sales. So you would come through, and if you were good, you made $100,000 your first year doing rentals, and then you started looking elsewhere to go find a better home and transition to sales. And that's exactly what happened to me. So stayed there for a few years, and that's when I came into another mom and pop with more of a sales focus, and they had introduced me to Mike Ferry. So that was the beginning of like the sales transition and prospecting, taking listings, and that sort of thing.
So we're in 2008. So 2009, did you make $100,000 per the ad?
I did, yeah, yep. 2009,
And were you max? I'm always fascinated with capacity. In 2009, to make $100,000, were you working 20 hours a week, 40 hours a week, 80 hours a week? What did life look like to make 100 grand doing rentals? Because, by the way, I still tell some agents, like, that's not a bad gig today, right? Like in Miami and New York and markets where the rents are what they are. Like we had a solo agent a couple of years ago, did 600 grand in GCI just doing purely rentals in South Florida.
Yeah, and that there's so much opportunity in rent. There really, I mean, we still do a lot of rentals throughout the year, and we still have all these old landlords that we've cultivated over the time, you know, and whatnot. But we, when I look back at it, I would say if I were to rate myself in the moment at 22 years old, living in Hoboken, New Jersey, which if nobody's ever been to Hoboken, it's a good place to have some beers, go out, have fun. It's right outside of New York City. It's really a fun. It's probably similar to being in Miami, you know, like good place to get into trouble. So with that, I would say I was probably working at like what I thought was a level 5 out of a 10 presently in that time. And that I did have flexibility in my schedule where, you know, those were the days where you could go to the gym at 11 a.m. and, you know, disappear for 3 hours in the middle of the day and wake up at 9 a.m. and still do your thing. But Saturdays and Sundays were showtime. So I missed out at that age a lot of like down the shore weekends when a lot of my friends that work corporate were off. I was on. So I was definitely trading non-conventional hours, you know, throughout the week for that, but then capitalizing on the freedom during weekdays to go out, you know, on karaoke night and stuff like that.
And then, so how did that transition go from you were doing the rentals, then you met the Mike Ferry organization? What did the world look like after that?
Yeah, so I remember meeting with a gentleman in 2009 this was June of 2009. You know, 22 turning 23 at the time, and I was telling him about, you know, how many rentals we're doing, and I was asking him how many rentals he does, and he was like, I don't count rentals, dude. And I'm like, well, how many transactions do you do? He's like 70. I'm like, how? And he's like, well, they're only listings. I'm like, but how? And that's when he introduced me to the Mike Ferry system. So in 2009, I switched brokerages. I went over to Liberty Realty. It was a mom and pop, as well in Hudson County, New Jersey. And I signed up for Mike Ferry one-on-one coaching, and I went to my superstar retreat that July. And my partner at the time was David DeVoe. He and I were taking quite a bit of listings. I think we took 18 for sale by owner listings in 12 weeks. And we're having massive success with prospecting. But what nobody at Mike Ferry was able to coach me through, and that my broker at the time too was not able to coach me through, was that there is a lot of stress that goes into keeping transactions and listings together. And that at my age and where I was from an emotional intelligence standpoint at that time, I didn't handle the pressure of busy and money coming in and all of that stuff well. So what had happened was the 18 listings came on, probably 12 of them sold. We didn't price a lot of them right. Pissed off sellers. I got busy, so I would stop prospecting. Deals were dying. This is 2009. So buyers were looking for every reason to kill a contract once they came in. It was just really exhausting. And at December of 2009, I think I want to say two of them closed or so, and I was back to broke. So I remember I had one big deal, a sale that was closing or supposed to close in January of that following year, 2010. It was at 77 Hudson. I want to say it was 530 grand, and they were paying out like 4% at the time. So it was a big commission for me. It was 20 grand. And then I probably split that 50-50 with my broker, but I'm counting that 11 grand coming in January. And the buyer lost his job right before it, and the whole thing blew up. And I didn't even know that was a thing that could happen. I hadn't been through that scenario yet. So I was like, okay.
A very common scenario in 2008, 9, and 10.
Yeah. Financial guy buying a condo, worked on Wall Street, got laid off, and poof, it's gone. So I remember, and I'm just telling you all this to anybody watching, just to understand, like, this stuff sucks. No matter where you're at in the business, it's like this is something that I personally lived through, and I had already booked a cruise. I've told this up on stage before, but I'd already booked a cruise for the Mike Ferry retreat, which left from San Diego, or was in San Diego. So the cruise left from LA. We were going down to Mazatlan and parts of Cabo down in Mexico, coming back up. That deal died right before it. So the 11 grand that I thought I was going to have, I did not have. And I was still going on a cruise, and I was still going to the Mike Ferry retreat with maxed out credit cards and a girlfriend at the time. I was so broke on that cruise that I figured out that a Foster's beer had twice the amount of alcohol in it than a Bud Light, or twice the volume, not alcohol content. But they were still charging the same amount. So I was drinking, like, I would just have a Foster's beer for $5 on the cruise ship per day. And then when we were in Mexico, I would go grab like a beer at a local bar where it felt a little dicey. I probably shouldn't have walked that far that way, but that was like the state I was in. And I remember coming back, I was overweight. And I just said to Liberty Realty, I'm like, I got to go back to Gotham. I got to go back to doing rentals. And for the next 3 or 4 years, I did rentals and made 100 grand a year back at Gotham Realty where it was safe. So those years, for me, were not growth years. They were very complacent. My level 5 out of a 10 from 2008, 2009 is where I went back to living, which when you've already done it once, it actually becomes like your level 2 out of a 10. It just becomes easier. And I didn't scale as a person. I didn't scale from an income standpoint. And David DeVoe, who was the business partner that I broke off from in 2009, he kept going. He kept running the play. So in 2013, he said, come back to Liberty Realty. I want you to be my buyer's agent. I want to get you out of rentals, and I want to help you go make more money. And he did. So that year, 2013, I made $187,000. And that was when I started to I lost a lot of weight in 2012. I broke up with the girl that I knew I wasn't going to marry anyway, but it was safe. And in 2013, I really found that why do I need to go make more money? And it is, who I was dating at the time is now my wife. I started to think about family. I started to think about kids. I started to think about savings. So I always jokingly say, if you don't have kids, go have kids, because it makes it really easy to figure out why you need to make money.
I talk about time too. I think when you are single and have no kids, we do this with time versus when you have a partner and kids, you're like, can you get to the point? Can you land the plane? Can we get to I gotta go.
That is so true. That is so true.
So again, in 2026, you are the top of the heat at arguably the most competitive company on the planet. Where did you go from buyer's agent, kind of getting focused, and when did you say, I'm going to go do this myself? And what was that thought process? Because what I really want to unpack for anyone listening is someone who's, stuck. Because what I just heard is that you had that period where you were complacent, whether it was out of safety or comfort, or but that I would synthesize that is to you were stuck for a couple of years, but then you had a breakthrough. Where did you find it? Was it external? Was it internal? Was it I think a lot of people who find themselves stuck are looking for what unblocked that moment. What was the aha for you?
Yeah. So I always take people back to when you swiped your credit card to get your real estate license. What were your goals? What did you see? Nobody wanted to make $42,000 a year and be highly stressed with no free time and whatnot. You could go work at Home Depot, make more money, and have a much better lifestyle.
I actually encourage agents every January 30th when we issue a 1099 to divide by 2,080 and have an honest conversation with your family. Because there are folks who should go get a job, have nights and weekends off, maybe one paid vacation a year, because it's probably more fair to themselves and their family.
100%. So 2013 to 2015, I was Dave's right-hand man on the DeVoe Group. I was the guy that helped cultivate agents, train agents. I was still selling 40, 50 homes a year myself as well. So making good money. But I didn't necessarily like the training process. I didn't like the hiring process. I didn't like the firing process. I didn't like the support that the agents were getting from the administrative staff. So I again started to take, I was comfortable. I could have stayed there. I started to take that leap, broke off from a team. I started coaching one-on-one with Matthew Ferry, who's Tom's brother, around more lifestyle and you can go do this. Going back to why am I really on this planet? Why am I here? So during that time, it was about how can I go make a difference so that nobody lives through the experience that I had from 2007, 2008 to 2013? How do I close that as quickly as possible? And that's literally what a line is. And then I said, okay, great. Now, when I exited that team, how do I build a world big enough where nobody would ever feel like they were hitting a ceiling or not having a say or not having the experience or their agents not having the experience within this world of real estate that they should be having? And that's where we really started to grow, teams within teams. We had leadership, we started to do structures. But the core of like what you're asking was, I had a yellow Lamborghini poster on my wall as a kid in 1994. And I was born in 86, so I guess I was 8 years old or so. But I remember it clearly. And I remember saying to my mom, I'm going to drive a yellow Lamborghini one day. And I didn't know why. I just wanted to drive a yellow Lamborghini.
I think it was a very standard issue poster in the '90s. I remember that one and the red one and remember they were pushing college on us. It was like education right by the cars.
Yeah, and the red Testarossas too. Those were that was I think there was a white Countach poster that I saw a lot too.
Yeah.
So I remember looking at those, and I remember thinking of like a young boy that anything could happen, and the sky was the limit, and that life had just kicked the crap out of me. And it kicks the crap out of a lot of folks. And working with Matthew, we realized that I lost sight on what is really possible. And when you and I were chatting before we got on this, I don't even rank myself within a system because I'm running at what I'm running at. And when I get there, I get there. But it's more so like daily moving. And that's what has that compounding effect on it that just creates this snowball that starts in 2008 and in 2026 is selling, 1,400 transactions, which again, to go back to like ranking it, knowing what I know now and knowing how much time I put into certain things, I could probably rebuild it and go start the whole thing and be at 2,000 transactions in 24 months if I really wanted. And there's people that do that, which is super cool about this business.
What was the unlock from, okay, I can feed myself, I'm killing it, to the leadership journey? Because and I don't know if you've heard me rant, I actually try to talk a lot of people out of starting teams. I think in real estate, we've glorified teams a lot over the last couple decades. And I accuse most teams of being social clubs or gang affiliations. And again, like I'm a student of psychology and how we're wired. And I think most people, start a team and recruit a bunch of people that are just like them, right? So you're a high I, you go surround yourself with a bunch of high highs and no one has attention to detail. What were the lessons learned in the leadership journey? Because I do tell people that when you start a team, it is fundamentally different, right? It is a leadership journey that you have to invest time, money, and learn how to lead people. Because I don't think that comes natural. We're not taught it in school. We're not taught it in college. It's a experiential journey. And where did you start on that journey?
Yeah, I would say reading a lot of books and working with Matthew Ferry quite a bit, and plugging into leadership that was around me and going to events and everything. I was good at consuming information and putting it into practice. This current stage of life where I'm at is I'm now getting a lot better at teaching it to then allow other leaders to then lead other leaders and lead other ones and creating that, appropriate org chart. But I would say what always worked well for me on a leadership standpoint was that, to your team's point, there's two types of teams. There's the team that is an infrastructure to support the main face of it, and everybody's kind of an overflow to that. And then there's a team where the main face of it is not as important. They're more so out of a production, similar to our team. And we're here to pour our hearts and souls into agents and team leaders, truly having their best life. So I think that if somebody wants to start a team, they need to make a decision in regard to which one they're looking to do. And the first one I mentioned is highly profitable. Like if I were to go back in time, which is what I would imagine your business was set up in a similar way, where, and I don't know, so correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm guessing that you had like highly skilled licensed admins to support the process, the transactions, the things that we're running through Leo. And that model, when I pencil it out, makes a heck of a lot more money than the model I'm in. And that's what I tell people, like, if you want, you need badass licensed administrative support around you to shelter you. If you want to be like really big and profitable, if you want to, focus on agent development and focus on team leader development, leadership development, then come my way. But it takes a long time and it takes scale for it to make sense financially.
Yeah, no, you guessed right. I would do 400 to 600 units with like less than 10 people, and it was my cost of goods sold was 33%. I paid out 25% on listings. We did very few buyers, so the 50% didn't really blend out that much. But I was 90% listing sided, and it was a machine focused B2B, high margin.
And that's, so I tell people, I'm like, that's, if you are going to go team, that's truly what you should be doing. Which is really, it works really well if you decide to do it. But yeah, to go back to like the leadership journey, I mean, I learned a lot about culture. Like I didn't learn I was good at culture until I was doing it for quite some time. And I would say like my superpower is, to your point, like we can have so many different personality types and things come into the equation that don't throw off the balance of like the core values within the organization, and making sure that everybody, despite being totally different, with 200 agents or 170 agents across the org, that they all still can get in a room and they're all family, and they all get along well, and they all want to win together, and they all have each other's backs. And that really, from a leadership standpoint, that was when I started to realize that was like my superpower. I leaned in on that and started to delegate away from the other things, the living in the spreadsheet, the operational, the systems, the things that I unfortunately need to know more about it than I really want to know about it, but it gives me hives when I'm looking at it. And I think that as a leader, looking at their organization, let's just say they're doing 100 million a year, looking at what are your strengths and weaknesses, and really figuring out how are you going to hammer down on your strengths, continue to do your weaknesses until you can hire that person and you have the revenue that you've made a decision around hiring with that to kick in and put in that place.
How do you define culture? I find culture is such a squishy word.
That's a good question, Leo. I don't know. I haven't been asked that. I would say, for me, culture truly is family. I say I have my core family, my true family, my blood family, and then I have my real estate family. And folks have said from the outside of it that I appear to be very tribal, and that if you're in my world, I've got your back. We'll do anything. If you're not in my world, that I'm cold. And I don't necessarily feel like I'm that way. But I would say that if I am going to give a person attention, that I'm going to give my family attention before I give random outsiders my attention. So I think that to protect the culture, to identify the culture, it's really like who's within your tribe. We joke when COVID hit in 2020, this is I've got some cool guys on my team that played, D1 football and, hockey, and, there's some big guys out there, but we used to joke, the world was shut down in New Jersey in 2020 when COVID hit. And I was like, if there's a zombie apocalypse, we're going to kick the crap out of any other real estate team that comes after us. Like we are that tribe, so just culturally, it's like, yeah, who do you want to go to battle with? Who do you want to go to war with? This is our group where everybody, truly is rowing or trying to row. Or my January 1st email that went out to the whole organization was around the idea that we had an amazing year. And a lot of people had way better years than they had the year prior. We track all of that data. We know where they stand within the organization. More importantly, a lot of people didn't. And I want every single person within this organization to be reaching out to the folks that didn't, the folks that aren't living their best life in the world of real estate, and figuring out how do we uplift them? How do we bring them to that point in time where they swipe their credit card to get the yellow Lamborghini one day, to do this, to do that. And that would be like my long-winded way of identifying what creates a strong culture and what culture truly is. It's like, we're all swimming together or we're all sinking together. And you see it like I think it's easier to point out a bad culture. If you point out a bad culture and you have toxicity within the organization, that toxicity is going to negatively affect so many folks, most likely pull 30% of the org out to go to a different company one day too. Like we see that. And I have people that reach out to us that are attempting to do that with other teams in our area or other brokerages. And I sniff that out right away, where if that's how I'm approached, I won't even entertain the conversation. I will, again, make them feel good about it, but I will keep them at a distance because I don't need that internally within my culture, within my tribe, within my organization.
You used a couple of words that resonate with me. So I until I did my first round of layoffs, like in the 2010 or 2012, I stopped using the word family with business. And it happened. So small businesses, 2, 5, 10 people are very much ran like a family. But once like I got into a growth business where I had 200-300 employees, I actually stopped using that word because I thought about it a lot. And I think we can all relate to, we all have a family member we love, but we probably wouldn't let them park our car. And that doesn't mean you would fire them, right? And so you actually use another word that I use, which is tribe. And I like the concept of, so I normally refer to the corporate staff as a team. And I love the team concept because like, look, championships are won with teams. We want to compensate people fairly based on their skill sets. If someone can outperform other people, they can earn more money. Like that's just how teams work, right? Like a superstar athlete makes more than other folks on the team who are great, but they're not the one putting up the big points on the board. And then I refer to the agents a lot as a tribe, right? Because tribes are an optional choice, right? Like families, you can't leave, right? It's like that's unless you change your name and move countries. Like most of the time, you can't get away from a family. So I liked a lot of your vocabulary, and I've actually intentionally removed family from any corporate stuff just because it feels disingenuous, right? Like, but I think about it a lot in the sense of but it's also what I'm hearing is you do a lot of demonstration, right? So not as much of like what I'm saying, but what I'm showing. And so, um, where does your time get spent today? I mean, you're selling north of 100 homes a month, and you're probably going to start approaching twice that as you continue to conquer your goals. What is your 20%, right? Like, I think most agents are surprised when I say my 20% is doing what we're doing right now, right? Either one to one, which this is a form of one to one, but this turns into one to many, right? And I prioritize the time like right after this. I'm going live to a bunch of agents in one group in Spanish, right? And my priority is I wake up and I try to make sure that the value proposition exceeds the cost. And how do we make sure we touch as many of you guys as possible currently with us or soon to be with us? Um, and I would say I spend 60-70% of my time doing that versus like running the company, right? But that's a privilege of leverage. And, you know, where that comes from is we have the resources to hire phenomenal people, right? So we have a bunch of smart people here, which doesn't mean I have to stare at spreadsheets all day long. But what does your 20% look like? And if you could, almost as a closing thought, what did it look like in each chapter of the evolution from solo to small team to um, you are now in our new vocabulary and enterprise team. So, and by the way, that is also adopted by Real Trends. So Real Trends is adopting our vocabulary there. So small, medium, large, mega, and now 50 plus team members. So you'll be competing in your own category, both at EXP and on Real Trends, which I think
I
is
like
pretty
that.
cool.
And I like how you divide it up. I think that's culturally very good for the agents at EXP to experience, leaderboards and real trends and how they're doing that. I think it's awesome to have it divvied up that way. It makes it more fair. It makes it more fun to compete.
Yeah, there are weight classes and teams in sports for a reason, right?
Yep. 100%. So to go back to the rental side of things, I had to post 10 posts on Craigslist per day to make my phone ring. That's all I had to do. The rest fell into place. I knew once it rang, I knew how to, get everything else to rent the places, everything. The inventory was there. It's so crazy how many days I missed just posting 10 things on Craigslist. Like that was the simplicity of like what needed to happen there. Then it went into prospecting for sellers and went into prospecting for buyers. That was where, my highest income producing activity was then. I would say that was still where I was focusing, a lot of my time until 2019 or so. It was just, direct to consumer conversation, and focusing on systems a little bit, but not at a crazy level. And when COVID hit, that was when we made the decision to scale or to lean out. And we started to scale through that. We started prospecting for agents, and that's when I started to get really into like the growth component of my day to day, which I still live for the most part in agent experience and like agent experience and development. I kind of group those two together. And I live in the growth area. So the majority of folks that come through our organization that join are in a meeting with me to cast that vision, to talk about the systems, to talk about their why, to get into like what's important to them, and ultimately making the decision on whether or not they should be here. So a typical day for me at this point is similar, where it's my 9:30 a.m. is a 90-day check-in with a wonderful agent that's already closed one home, brand new, and also has one pending. And we're talking about 2026 visions. And if she nets 100 grand after taxes, what is she going to do with that money, and getting into all of that. Then right into a Zoom with or a StreamYard with the CEO of eXp Realty. And then from there, we're going to go up, and I think I have some recruiting calls in between that, but I'm going to drive up, shoot some content with our media department, have that sliced up. You guys will see it come out. It's just, I'm going to shoot probably 10 things in the exact same outfit, not overthink it, just do the content and let it roll out. And then we've been talking about too, just some leadership overrides that scale well within the organization, and having clear job descriptions for these folks, as we scale, so that they know what they're doing and that they can actually lose their job if they don't perform for the agents that they're supporting. And I think that's the big thing that and where we're living right now, where again, it takes up a lot of my time, but I'm more so making decisions on it with where we're at. And that's what's like getting the business to where we need to go, is those tough conversations, those non-family conversations, the fact that I like how you use the word team. We think of our leadership, it's great. We think of our leadership as more of that team, where they might not be that family feeling, that tribal feeling. And it's because it's their job to move an organization. They have to align with our core values, but it's their job to move an organization to where it needs to be going. And I like that you brought up like the championship, because not everybody on Michael Jordan's team liked Michael Jordan, but Michael Jordan won championships. So when you're on the court, you run the play and you win. And when you're off the court, you don't have to go hang out with him. He's not in your family. It's okay. That's what we're using right now too, when we're talking about leadership, when we're talking about different dynamics, when we're talking about folks within the organization that their job is to focus on negative things that are happening, to make sure that they can correct them, and having conversations that are difficult around people that are lacking in performance and whatnot. That at the end of the day, the goal is to win. And is that person going to help us win? Is that person going to help us win? Is this the winning team of leadership? And if so, let's go win a championship.
Last question. What do you think is the self-discovery process someone should go through if they think they want to scale to be one of the largest teams in the country like you are?
What I had to get really good at was the financial component of it, and understanding P&Ls and forecasting, and how to make decisions around money and how to make decisions around people. So I would just say, if the goal is to scale big, do you care to obsess over that process? And if you do, which is a chapter of my life that I truly geek out on it. Like I truly geek out on agent development, brand new agent, team leader, whatever it may be. I truly geek out on system efficiency. I truly geek out on profitability. I truly geek out on allowing a team to come into our world and instantly be more profitable when I analyze their P&Ls and see what's happening at this thing that doesn't have accountability around it. So if the goal is to go big, do over $1 billion in sales, do over 2,000 in units, do whatever it may be, I would say that you have to truly be obsessive around results, profitability, financials, and thankfully my wife is on board for this journey, because there are times, and there were times in the past, where we said, what the heck are we doing? This is insane. Do we blow the whole thing up and run a super simple model? And fortunately, she stood by my side. And I tell people there are years where you're going to question it, and you're going to lose agents that are going to truly break your heart. You're going to feel it, and you have to be obsessed with where you're going, and you have to be obsessed with agent development. And you have to be obsessed with the process, and if you feel like you have that, go do it, and go to Team Leader Academy to not make the same mistakes that we made. Thank you for that. I'm super excited to be tied into that. But that's I feel like going to we're going to lay it all out. We're going to talk about where we blew up one month, where this worked, where this didn't work, and try to get agents or team leaders to do what we did in less time.
Well, I think that the plug is fair. We're practitioner based, right? So that's why Fast Cap is the 0 to 1, and then Team Leader Academy is that like 5 to 10, right? That next process and the step. Well, Brett, thank you so much for spending some time with me today. If agents want to reach out to you, what's the best way to get you? Is Instagram, Slack?
Yeah, Instagram, Slack, whatever. I'm still a realtor at the end of the day, so just Google me, you'll find me.
Awesome, Brett. Thank you so much for your time.